Hi, everybody. I'm Ross Benjamin, host of the Winner's Circle. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Chip Chirimbes of out of South Florida, enjoying the weather there. Boy, Chip, I was bragging it was in the 60s here last week, but then you were complaining because the surf or whatever that temperature was went down a little bit the other day. So, breaking my hump as always.
Well, believe it or not, it's in the 60s here today, but the
Wow.
surf temperature's back up to 80.2. So I'm kind of happy about
So
that.
you're happy about that. Yeah.
Because I don't play unless we're at least 80 degrees.
Yeah.
So.
Lake Ontario's about, the water temperature is about 38 right now. So water skiing is a bit off. Swimming is way off. So we'll see. Anyway, let's get to the matter at hand. This is our Final Four edition. And Chip, before we get to our we'll go over both games and then give a free pick. You have a free pick in the Houston and Baylor game. I'll have a free pick in the UCLA and Gonzaga game. Before we get to that, tell the folks how you've been doing of late and where they can find you.
Well, thank you, Russ. And of course, they can find me at chipwins.com. And we got off to a great start in Major League Baseball. We hit our first best bet of the year. Went 2-1 on the day. 3 dogs. We come up a winner. 2-1. So looking forward to it. Baseball every day. Going to have most likely 3 games out there. Never heavy favorites. And of course, NBA winding down toward the playoffs. And this weekend with the NCAA. So really excited about the weekend. It's a great time of the year for us. Baseball's flourishing. And, we're playing a full 162 game schedule, Ross, and closed the season strong last year and was number 2 in the nation. And really looking to repeat this season.
That's an impressive resume right there, folks. Again, number 2 in the nation last year in Major League Baseball. And, folks, don't get too carried away with win percentage when it comes to baseball. Right. I know a lot of handicappers that get hit over 60%, but they don't make any money because they're betting all heavy favorites. As Chip just alluded to, you don't need us to take a team minus 155 or greater. You could deplete your own bankroll. But anyway, I got off to a good start in baseball as well. Gave out 1 pick yesterday, had the Arizona-San Diego game over 8.5. That game went over, I think, by the 3rd inning. So a nice start. And my dime players in Major League Baseball since 2014 are up over $39,000. So a lot of people ask me, Chip, and I'm sure you've heard this too, what's your best sport? Okay, what do you do the best in? And I hate answering that question because it varies from year to year. And I would say I'm very comfortable with Major League Baseball. Anyway, your thoughts?
I think it varies game to game because, sometimes we're doing multiple sports at the same time, and you may be hot in one and just mediocre or not doing well in another. It's difficult to say because you feel like when you're winning in the NFL, you feel like this is the best. And when you're winning in college basketball, this is the best. And baseball's always been really, really good to us. So, they're all different though. I mean, and the approach to them all is pretty much different, but well, unless you're looking the way I look at it, and then it's all the same.
Yeah, I always joke, and I don't know how sincere I am when I say this, but when people ask me what's your favorite sport, I always say that I could handicap baseball in a rocking chair. And what I mean that is to me, it starts with starting pitching, and it evolves from there, Chip, and that's how I look at things.
The major problem nowadays is the starting pitching is only expected to go 5 or 6 innings. So, we had this, particularly last year, with impactful, and it started probably the season before with Dave Cash at Tampa, where you're not getting much value out of your starter, but you're paying that kind of price for it when the line comes out. So it's difficult. It's getting a little tougher, I think, to go after it. People are beginning on Ross to like the first 5 innings because of that. And like you came up with yesterday, you came up with a big total as a winner. That's the other way to go as well.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing to do, I know what I pay attention to a lot, starting in the last recent couple of years, is I look at how each bullpen does. I want to know how they're performing of late, because you get a situation like Tampa Bay, and like you said, who cares who's the starter, because he's only going to go an inning or 2. Yeah. But you know what? I do remember, and again, we're getting off kilter here, folks. We're going to cover the 2 Final Four matchups. But since we just started baseball season, it's an interesting conversation. You know, I remember Chipper being irate with Dave Cash last year, specifically in Game 7 of the World Series, right?
Sure.
When
Sure.
Glasnow was throwing a gem after 6 innings, and he pulled him just because that's what he's
Actually,
been doing all year long.
it was Snell actually in Game
Snell?
7.
Okay, Blake Snell,
And
correct.
he ended up saying, "This is the end of my tenure with with the Rays."
Right. And he's starting, as a matter of fact, ironically enough, he's starting for San Diego today, Blake
Yep.
Snell. Anyway, let's get to the Final Four matchups, Chip. You know, we got a number 11 seed in the tournament, UCLA. So very interesting in that regard. Let's start with the Houston Baylor game, though. This is a Houston team that's the first team ever to start the NCAA tournament by facing 4 double-digit seeds in a row. And
Right.
I question when I look at this game how ready they're going to be ready to play against a team like Baylor. What's your initial thoughts, and then I'll add in.
You know, the thoughts are to complain about Houston is pretty much that's how their regular season goes because of the conference they're in, that they
Yeah.
don't play any competition. So the idea that they played all double-digit seeds just makes me think of the smaller conference that they're in, and you can dominate that, and you're still not going to get the kind of respect. But you know whose respect they did earn this year, and they were 20-10 against the points.
Yeah.
They earned the bookmakers' respect, and so did Baylor. They were 18-10 against the points. These two teams, and if you've been watching them, they go after you defensively. Even Baylor the other night, I was watching them. As they're very intense on the ball now. Maybe it's a different style because it's the playoffs. Houston, number 1 defensively against field goal shots on the year at 37%, and yet here's Baylor, number 1 in 3% shooting.
Yeah.
3-point shooting. And Baylor's been an over team all year. They're 13-3 as an over, as a favorite, 7-3 in the last 10 to the over in the NCAA. But I think the defense I saw Baylor playing the other night was very impressive. I mean, Houston's defense is only allowing 57.6 points a game. They're 23-9 to the under when they're an underdog. They're 19-6 to the under when playing a team with a winning percentage over 60%. I like that stat, Ross, because it lets you know how they do against the better teams, and they're not just beating up on the little guy. But Houston is also 13-6 to the under on neutral sites. I'm playing this game under the total. I just think it's going to be defense, the way Baylor played defense and the way the Cougars have been playing it all year, no matter what their competition. I think this game's going to stay under the total.
Yeah, so Chipper likes Houston and Baylor to go under the total of 134.5. I can't disagree with that. I don't know if I'm going to use the total in this game, but if I was to, that would be the direction I would go. You mentioned Houston. You failed to cover in their last game against Oregon State, much to your chagrin, but I was happy with the result. They blew a 17-point halftime lead, I believe.
Yeah.
And only won by 6. The good thing for anybody betting Houston is they've gone 10-0 against the number this year following an ATS loss. And they won those 10 games all straight up by an average of 27 points per game. Here's the downfall when I look at if you're back in Houston. Again, they faced 4 double-digit seeds in a row. Okay? They've definitely, things have worked their way for them. In other words, not only they got a good draw, but they had a little luck along the way in terms of who they had to face. On the other hand, Baylor, as a number 1 seed, their last 3 wins have come over quality teams like Wisconsin, Villanova, and Arkansas. And they covered all 3 of those games as a favorite. And obviously, it doesn't take a brain surgeon, even if you're a casual college basketball observer, you know that playing in the Big 12 and the competition in the Big 12 much tougher than with all due respect to the American Athletic Conference. So you mentioned Baylor, number 1 3-point offense in the country, 41.1% of they're making from the 3-point line. Well, the other part of the equation is Houston is one of the best at defending the 3. So this shapes up to be a very interesting matchup. And Chipper also mentioned, you have a Houston team that you like the under in this game. They're number 328 out of 357 teams in terms of offensive tempo. They average just 64.6 offensive possessions per 40 minutes this year. That's a really slow tempo. Baylor, they're middle of the road in that regard. So I could see this being a very methodical, slow-paced offensive game. So, yeah, Chipper, I mean, if I'm going to make a play in this game, I definitely would agree with you. Let's move on to the UCLA and Baylor game, Chip. And right now, as we speak, and again, folks, we're taping on Friday, April 2nd. These games are on Saturday, April 3rd. So keep that in mind when you view the video. Gonzaga right now, Chipper, minus 14, and the total's 145.5. And they're facing a number 11 seed in UCLA.
Yeah.
There's only been 4 teams since 1990 that reached the Final Four as a double-digit seed. The previous 4, 0-4 straight up and against the spread. However, keep this in mind. The average line in those games was only a little over 6, and the average margin of victory was around 13. This is a whole different animal. The opposite side of the spectrum, Chip, is there's only been 7 teams that have been a favorite of minus 8.5 or greater in a Final Four contest. And the previous 7 have gone 1-6 against the spread and lost 2 of those games outright. So don't mean to confuse everybody, but there's a lot to consider here, Chipper.
Well, during the regular season, if you played Gonzaga, it was no great prize. I think they were 12-12 or somewhere around there against the number. And here they come when it counts, and they're 4-0 in the NCAA. And for the most part, except for Oklahoma, it hasn't even been close. They've been blowing everyone out in the first half as it is. If you played them first half and game, you're 8-0. So Gonzaga is some monster to have to deal with. The thing with UCLA is nobody has any kind of confidence in them whatsoever. And I think they're offensively very limited, Ross.
Yes.
But when I watched the Alabama and the Michigan game, their opponents, those are 2 quality opponents. They couldn't make passes between each other. I mean, this UCLA, their hands were so quick and their defense was so stifling. I'm not even talking about getting off good shots where the Michigan guard went 1 for 11 and the other guard went 1 for 7. That's defensive pressure, which causes that to happen. So UCLA had one guy in double figures when they beat Michigan. So I don't know how they're going to stand up to this Gonzaga team other than defensively, but how do you stop the number 1 offensive team in the nation that's got depth? They have, 1 or 2 guys could not be on. It's just, are they going to be able to get their shots off with this UCLA Bruin defense, which to me looked so unbelievably quick against Alabama and against Michigan?
So in the first half of their game against Alabama in the regional final, I text Chip and I said, boy, this was a grand idea. Both of us taking Alabama in this game. And I also joked and said, Chip, I really think that Gonzaga can give the Houston Rockets a hell of a game right now, how good they are, So experienced team, yes, a real difficult chore here. Here's the thing. I'm not so sure UCLA is as good as their points per game allowed indicates. I just think 2 things. Number 1, they play at an extremely slow pace. Now, number 2, on the other side of the equation, they're one of the best teams in the country in terms of offensive efficiency, and that's points per 100 possessions. So, and they don't turn the ball over, Chip. They protect the ball. And Gonzaga is not one of those high pressure teams. They're not an Arkansas. They're not an Alabama that are in your face trying to push tempo. They just naturally like to play fast, get big leads, and then the other teams can't afford to be methodical, either because they're not offensively efficient or they fall behind by a lot. So to me, I think this game is an under for me. I'm going to go, my free pick in this game is going to be UCLA and Gonzaga under 145.5. Again, Chip likes Houston Baylor under 134.5. I like UCLA and Gonzaga under 145.5. Chip, any final thoughts?
Well, the tournament's winding down and baseball's tipping off. So opening day is a big day in my life. When I was a teacher, I used to skip school as a teacher to go to opening day in New York. They caught on to that pretty quick, though. So I had to get out of there. But baseball's where my focus is now, and the NBA, of course, closing down. This is a big weekend for us in the NCAA, a final weekend, and I hope we close with a bang.
And I'm sure we will. And again, you could find Chip's picks at chipwins.com. You can find mine at rbwins.com. Both of us proven winners over the years. I'm 10-6 in the NCAA tournament since round 2. And Chipper, number 2 in the country in Major League Baseball last year. Myself, I've made my dime players, like I said, over $39,000 since 2014. And folks, you're not going to get any big chalks from us in Major League Baseball. You don't need us for that. In any event, until the next time, for Chip Chirimbes and Ross Benjamin, I'd like to wish each and every one of you all the very best and good luck with all your picks.